She was just the woman who delivered milk at sunrise, always quiet, always alone, and always on time. Rain, snow, it didn't matter. Her truck would roll into the neighborhood before the birds had even started singing. Some people barely remembered her face. They just knew the bottles would be sitting neatly at the doorstep, never missing a day. But there was one person, one boy, who remembered everything. Every detail, every moment. Because she didn't just deliver milk to his house. She delivered him from something far worse. When Jordan was 7, he was the kid no one really asked about. He had a habit of showing up to school with bruises and excuses that never made sense. Fell down the stairs. Walked into a cabinet. The teachers grew suspicious. The neighbors whispered. But nobody did anything. Except her. Her name was Lorraine Green. She noticed things others ignored, like how Jordan flinched when someone raised their voice, how he always wore long sleeves, even in the heat, and how he stood at the window every morning, not for cartoons, but to watch her truck pull up. She didn't ask questions, not at first. She just started leaving little extras in the crate, an extra bottle of chocolate milk, a small pack of biscuits. Once, a note with only 2 words, "Stay strong." That morning, Jordan didn't go to school. His eye was swollen. He could barely walk straight. And for the first time, Lorraine did more than leave a note. She knocked on the door. It opened just a crack. A man stood there, unshaven, red eyes, short temper radiating off him like heat from a stove. "What do you want?" he growled. Lorraine didn't flinch. "Is the boy here?" "He's sick. Ain't none of your business." "Then maybe it's time someone made it their business." What happened after that isn't written in any official report. No police came that day. No caseworker showed up. But something changed. Jordan didn't show up with bruises anymore. And Lorraine? She started delivering milk a little later in the morning. It was her way of saying, "I've got time now, if anyone needs me." Years passed. Jordan moved away. New family, new town, new life. But not a day went by that he didn't remember the woman with the calm eyes and quiet strength. The one person who didn't turn away, who didn't ask what was wrong. She just did something. 20 years later, Jordan wasn't a scared boy anymore. He was something else. Something no one, especially not that old neighborhood, ever expected him to become. And now he was going back. But not for revenge, not for closure. He was going back for her. The problem was, no one had seen Lorraine in years. Some said she retired. Others thought she moved away. A few even believed she passed. But Jordan wasn't leaving without finding her. Because some debts you don't repay with money. You repay them with your whole heart. And as he stepped into that town after 2 decades, one name on his lips, he realized. Not everyone had forgotten her, but someone had made sure she'd be erased. And that's when things started to unfold in ways he never could have predicted. The town looked smaller than Jordan remembered. The streets were quieter, the trees taller, but some things never changed. That bakery on the corner still had the same cracked sign. The benches near the park still leaned a little to the side. And the corner house with the broken gate? Still there. Only now it looked emptier, hollow, like the memories it held. Jordan drove slowly, eyes scanning every street, every porch, or every mailbox. He had asked around, first at the old grocery store, then the post office. But no one had a clear answer. "Lorraine Green?" one woman said, squinting like the name tugged at something distant. "The milk lady? Ain't seen her in years. Heard she moved out of state." Another man shook his head. "I remember her. Quiet lady, real respectful. Think she lived up by the hill at one point. You'd have to ask old Will. He knew everybody back then. So Jordan found old Will. He sat outside the mechanic's shop, working on a rusted radio with a cigarette hanging from his lips. "Lorraine," he repeated, pulling the cigarette out and exhaling slow. "Yeah, I remember her. She used to bring me the skim milk, said whole milk messed with my pressure. Real thoughtful." Jordan smiled. "You know what happened to her?" Will nodded slowly. "She had a tough run. Took care of her mother for years. After her mom passed, she kept to herself. Think she stopped deliveries a while after that? Word is, she fell behind on the house. You know how it goes. Bills don't wait for grief. Do you know where she went?" Will scratched his chin, thinking hard. "Last I heard, she moved into a small place on Maplewood, retirement community. Nothing fancy." Jordan thanked him, wrote down the address, and drove straight there. It wasn't what he expected. The building was old, with cracked windows and peeling paint. A flickering neon sign said, "Maplewood Arms." The lobby smelled like dust and cheap floor polish. An elderly man in a sleeveless sweater pointed Jordan to Unit 2C. He knocked twice. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. But just as he turned to leave, a voice from the end of the hall spoke up. "She ain't there." Jordan turned to see a woman pushing a cart of laundry. "Lorraine? She moved out 2 months ago. Health got worse. They moved her to assisted living." His chest tightened. "Do you know which one?" She looked him over carefully before responding. "Green Hill Meadows. It's upstate. Quiet place, real clean. They take good care of folks there." The next morning, Jordan hit the road. He didn't care how far it was or how long it took. He had to find her. The drive was long and winding, the kind that gives you too much time to think. He remembered her voice. Not that she spoke much, but when she did, it was calm, careful, full of kindness. He remembered how her hands looked, worn, cracked, always holding something, a bottle, a note, a small bandage for his bruised arm. He hadn't just come to thank her. He needed her to know that her actions mattered, that she changed the course of a life, that she saved him in ways no one else ever did. Green Hill Meadows sat atop a gentle hill, surrounded by quiet trees and trimmed hedges. The woman at the front desk checked the roster. "Lorraine Green. Yes, she's here. But just a heads up, she doesn't talk much anymore. Stays in her room mostly." "That's okay," Jordan said. "I just want to see her." He walked slowly down the hall, heart thumping, memories flooding in like waves. When he reached her room, he paused, hand hovering over the door. Then he knocked softly. A moment passed. Then a quiet, tired voice said, "Come in." He pushed the door open, and there she was, thinner, older. But those same eyes, calm, steady, kind, looked up at him. She blinked. "Can I help you?" Jordan stepped inside, barely breathing. "It's me," he said. "You used to deliver milk to my house when I was a kid. My name's Jordan." She stared at him for a long moment. Then her eyes welled up. "I remember you," she whispered. "The little boy with the sad eyes." He smiled. "Not so little anymore." She chuckled, a soft, worn-out laugh. But it carried something warm. "I never forgot you," she said. "I used to worry, wonder what happened to you. I made it," he said. "Because of you." He pulled something from his pocket, a small folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. It was the note she left him that day. "Stay strong." "I kept this," he said. "My whole life. Every time I felt like I was slipping, I read this. It reminded me that someone believed in me. Her hands trembled as she took the note, eyes scanning the faded ink. "I didn't think it made a difference," she whispered. "It made all the difference." They sat in silence for a while. No words needed, just the weight of years and the peace of being seen. But Jordan wasn't done. He reached into his bag and pulled out a thick folder. "What's that?" she asked. "My thank you," he said. Inside the folder were documents, arrangements, plans. He had bought her a new home, hired a nurse, set up everything. "You're coming to live with me," he said. "If you want, you'll never be alone again." She looked at him, stunned. "But why?" "Because you didn't ask why back then. You just helped. No one else did." Her eyes filled again. "I never wanted anything back," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "That's what makes you worthy of everything." And in that moment, it didn't matter who saw or who knew. What mattered was that after all these years, kindness had found its way home. But not everyone was happy about it, because some people had gone to great lengths to bury her story, and Jordan was about to uncover exactly why. Jordan stayed by Lorraine's side for hours that day. They talked about everything and nothing, about the way the town changed, the people who came and went, and the silent battles they both fought over the years. She had a memory like a locked chest, and little by little, he was starting to find the key. But something in her voice made him pause during one of their conversations. When she spoke about her old home, there was pain. Not just the grief of losing it, but something deeper. Like the loss wasn't just financial, like someone had taken it from her. "You said you stopped delivering after your mother passed," Jordan asked gently. "What happened to the house?" She looked away for a moment, fingers tracing the edge of the blanket. "I got a letter one day, from the bank. Said I was months behind. I didn't understand how. I always paid what I could. It wasn't much, but enough to keep things moving. And they just took it? They said there had been a mistake, that a signature was missing, something about paperwork being incomplete. I was grieving. I didn't fight it. I didn't know how." Jordan frowned. Something didn't add up. The next day, he made a few calls, then a few more. It started as curiosity. Then it turned into something heavier, because the records showed that her home had been foreclosed less than a month after her mother's death, and sold shortly after that. But not to a stranger, to a man named Alan Brewster. Jordan recognized the name instantly. Alan Brewster was a real estate developer, owned half the west side of town now. Slick, politically connected, and ruthless. But years ago, he was just another suit in the local bank's loan office, the very bank that handled Lorraine's mortgage. Jordan dug deeper. He went through archived deeds, bank files, old newspapers. What he found made his stomach turn. Lorraine's property wasn't just any house. The land sat on a stretch that had been earmarked for commercial development for years. Developers had been trying to buy up homes along that road for nearly a decade. Most families gave in, sold for pennies. But Lorraine never budged, so they found another way. The paperwork she'd received was legal but manipulated. Her payment history had been altered. Her account flagged for inactivity, even though records showed consistent deposits. It wasn't a foreclosure. It was a setup. She was never meant to keep her home. They had targeted her, waiting for the moment she was weakest. And then they took everything. Jordan's blood boiled. He wasn't a kid anymore, and he wasn't powerless. He contacted a lawyer, a friend from college who owed him a favor. They reviewed every file, every transaction, every signature. Within days, the lawyer confirmed what Jordan already knew. There's enough here to make noise, the lawyer said. Maybe even drag it into court. But it won't be easy. Brewster's powerful. He'll deny everything. Then we won't ask, Jordan said. We'll show. He knew exactly what to do next. He returned to the town's local paper, the Ridgeview Herald. Small, barely surviving, but still respected. He sat across from the editor, a sharp-eyed woman named Talia Monroe, who hadn't forgotten Lorraine. She used to bring me milk when my mom was sick, Talia said quietly. Wouldn't take a dime. Jordan laid the evidence out in front of her. Contracts, signatures, bank logs, property transfers. By the end of the meeting, Talia leaned back in her chair, eyes wide. They really did this to her? Yes, Jordan said. And they didn't just do it to her. There are at least 5 other names on similar files, all low income, all elderly, all black. Talia didn't blink. I'll run it. And just like that, the story broke. The front page read, Bank Fraud and Land Grab. How Lorraine Green Lost Her Home to a Developer's Scheme. The article spread like wildfire. Local news picked it up, then regional outlets, then national bloggers looking for real-life injustice stories. People were furious. Neighbors who hadn't seen Lorraine in years posted messages of support. Strangers offered to donate to her. Former employees from the bank came forward with quiet confirmations of suspicious practices. And Brewster? He panicked. He denied. Then he deflected. Then his lawyers sent out cease and desist letters like candy. But the damage was done. People demanded an investigation. Protesters stood outside the bank. Town meetings turned chaotic. Brewster's name became poison overnight. But none of that mattered to Jordan as much as the moment he returned to Lorraine's room, holding the newspaper in his hand. She looked at the headline, then at him. You didn't have to do this, she said softly. He shook his head. Yes, I did. Her voice wavered. I just wanted to be forgotten quietly. I didn't want all this attention. Jordan sat beside her. You were forgotten when it was convenient for everyone else, but not by me. Never by me. She smiled then. Not a big one, but one that spoke of peace and hope. Later that week, the mayor's office issued an apology. The bank released a statement. An independent review of all past foreclosure cases was launched. And the biggest surprise of all? Brewster resigned from every position he held. Justice didn't always come fast. But this time, it came loud. And for Lorraine, it meant more than a new home or financial help. It meant she was seen, heard, respected. Still, Jordan knew the story wasn't over. Because just as the dust started to settle, he received a call from an anonymous number. The voice on the other end said something that chilled him to the bone. You should stop digging, Mr. Carter. Some truths are better left buried. Jordan's jaw tightened. They hadn't learned. He wasn't backing down. Not now. Not after what Lorraine had been through. Because buried in the past was a name. Someone who had orchestrated more than just Lorraine's fall. The threat over the phone wasn't just a scare tactic. Jordan knew that tone. He had heard it before. Growing up, in boardrooms, behind polished smiles and firm handshakes, it was the voice of someone with something to lose. Someone cornered. But Jordan wasn't going to back down. Not after everything Lorraine had endured. She gave him her strength when he had nothing. Now it was his turn to protect her legacy. That night, he revisited every document. He traced names, signatures, dates. Something was still missing. One last connection that tied it all together. That's when he stumbled across a signature on an old foreclosure file. one that had been stamped, not signed. He enlarged the digital file and examined the name. Deputy Loan Officer, Henry Callow. That name triggered something. Not from the news, not from public records, from his childhood. Henry Callow had once been a frequent visitor at the foster care center Jordan had stayed in briefly before being adopted. A man in a suit who asked too many questions and always left with files. He wasn't staff, but he knew the system too well. Jordan started digging. What he uncovered made his stomach twist. Henry Callow wasn't just a bank officer. He was a former child welfare contractor. Years ago, before he landed his role at the bank, he'd worked for a state-funded program focused on rehousing troubled children. The program had quietly ended after multiple complaints were filed. Most of them never followed up. Callow had access to files, families, histories, weak spots. And Jordan realized something chilling. Lorraine's home wasn't just targeted because of its location. It was because of her past. And his. Callow had seen Jordan's name resurface when he rose to prominence in the business world, and he had gone out of his way to hide any link between the foreclosure and Lorraine, afraid it might one day blow back. It had. Jordan called his lawyer again. "We need to subpoena every foreclosure linked to Callow between 2004 and 2010, he said. "I think this goes deeper." The results were worse than he imagined, at least a dozen similar cases. All involved elderly or single black homeowners. All had links to property development sales months later, and all had Callow's name on the paperwork. A coordinated scheme, using the system, exploiting grief, and preying on the voiceless. Jordan didn't stop with the courts. He called in favors from every reporter he knew. He published the findings in a public report, attached real names, real addresses, real victims, and then he went live. He held a press conference, not as a businessman, but as someone who had once been a scared, broken kid, saved by a woman society discarded. He stood in front of the flashing cameras and said, "Her name is Lorraine Green, and this town forgot her. But I won't." The press erupted. Government officials launched a formal investigation into past bank conduct. Civil suits were filed against Callow, Brewster, and several other names that emerged from the mess. And Jordan? He didn't stop. He created a legal aid foundation in Lorraine's name, dedicated to helping elderly homeowners fight foreclosure and predatory lenders. He funded the first 5 cases himself. All 5 resulted in settlements, and one even reclaimed a property after a decade. But the most powerful moment came quietly. A month after the press conference, Jordan escorted Lorraine, now out of the hospital and in recovery, back to a small house on the very street she used to deliver milk down. It wasn't the same home she lost, but it was in the same neighborhood. Renovated, safe, mortgage-free, bought and restored with Jordan's own money, in her name. When she stepped inside, she didn't say a word at first, just ran her fingers along the windowsill and smiled. "It smells like beginnings," she whispered. Jordan looked around. "It's yours." She shook her head gently. "No, child. It's ours. You were always my boy. Now this is your home too." But Jordan had one last surprise. The next day, Lorraine was honored at a city-wide ceremony. Hundreds gathered in the town square. Former customers, children now grown, neighbors who had forgotten her name until it was on the news again. The mayor stepped forward with a plaque, but Jordan stopped him. He took the mic and said, "This woman saved my life with a carton of milk and a warm coat. And not once did she ask for praise. But today, she gets it." He turned to Lorraine and handed her the key to the city. "But more than this," he added, We've renamed the community shelter after you. From this day forward, it will be known as Lorraine's Haven." She wept softly, overwhelmed, not just by the honor, but by finally being seen. Later that evening, away from the cameras, Jordan sat beside her on the porch. The stars were out, and for the first time in a long time, there was peace in the air. She turned to him. "You know, I always wondered what became of you." Jordan nodded. "And I always wondered how to thank you." "You just did," she said, gripping his hand. The past had been cruel, but the future? The future was hers, and now the whole world knew her name.